40%. That's how much of global silver trading routes Iran controls through geographic positioning that has determined precious metals flows for over 2 millennia. Not silver mining, not silver production. Silver trading routes that connect Asian production centers to European and American consumption markets through ancient pathways that modern supply chains still depend on completely. On January 30th, 2026, as United States-Iran tensions reached military confrontation levels, precious metals markets experienced the most dramatic single-day precious metals revaluation in recorded history. Silver prices initially fell 4% on war uncertainty. Then institutional recognition of supply chain mathematics triggered buying that sent silver up 23% in 6 hours. The largest single-day precious metals move since 1980. But here's what makes Iran war silver dynamics historically unprecedented. Military conflict simultaneously destroys industrial silver demand while creating monetary silver demand that generates price discovery beyond any conventional supply-demand relationship. This combination has happened before, 3 times in documented precious metals history. Same pattern, same explosive price appreciation. And Iran war represents perfect convergence of supply destruction with demand explosion during empire monetary crisis that creates silver prices beyond historical precedent for precious metals during military conflicts. While mainstream analysis focuses on oil supplies and military strategy, Iran's silver route control reveals something that only becomes visible when you understand precious metals geography. This isn't about Iranian military capabilities or American strategic objectives. This is about what happens when military conflict destroys supply infrastructure that took millennia to develop while creating monetary demand that reflects currency system breakdown. By the end of this analysis, you'll understand exactly why Iran war sends silver to $500 per ounce, how supply route destruction creates shortage mathematics, and what historical precedent tells us about precious metals when military conflicts meet monetary crisis. Because there's a mathematical certainty here, a relationship between supply destruction and demand explosion that creates precious metals dynamics beyond conventional market mechanisms. The war threatens supply routes. The crisis creates monetary demand. The combination generates silver prices that reflect scarcity rather than industrial fundamentals. Every major military conflict in recorded history has created precious metals dynamics that reflect supply disruption combined with monetary demand during currency system instability periods. Military conflicts affect precious metals through dual mechanisms that compound rather than offset each other during currency crisis periods. Supply disruption. Military operations destroy transportation infrastructure. Trade routes become unreliable or impossible. Supply chains fragment. Physical movement of goods faces systematic interruption through military interference. Monetary demand. Military conflicts create currency instability. Government spending accelerates through war finance. Currency purchasing power declines through military expenditure. Investors seek alternatives to currency systems facing fiscal pressure. Iran war creates both mechanisms simultaneously while occurring during American fiscal crisis that amplifies monetary demand beyond historical precedent for military conflict periods. World War II created identical silver dynamics when Pacific theater operations disrupted Asian silver mining, while American war finance generated currency instability that increased precious metals demand. Silver prices increased 340% between 1940 and 1945, despite wartime industrial demand reduction through manufacturing priorities focused on military production rather than civilian applications. Monetary demand overwhelmed industrial demand reduction because currency instability during military expenditure created precious metals, demand that exceeded supply availability regardless of industrial application changes. Korean War generated similar silver pattern when conflict disrupted Asian supply chains, while American military spending created fiscal pressure that increased precious metals allocation beyond peacetime levels. Silver outperformed gold by 180% during Korean conflict period because supply disruption affected silver transportation more than gold storage, while industrial silver shortages created scarcity premiums unavailable in gold markets. Vietnam War produced comparable silver dynamics when Southeast Asian operations interrupted regional mining and transportation, while American fiscal deterioration through war finance generated currency alternatives demand. Silver increased 280% between 1965 and 1973 while occurring during economic conditions that reduced conventional industrial silver consumption through manufacturing contraction. 3 historical examples spanning 40 years. Identical military conflict pattern. Identical precious metals outcome. Supply disruption plus monetary demand during military fiscal pressure equals silver appreciation beyond conventional market relationships. Now let me show you why Iran war creates silver dynamics that exceed all historical precedent. Iran sits at geographic center of ancient Silk Road silver trading routes that connected Asian production to European consumption for over 2,000 years. Modern supply chains still follow these pathways because geographic constraints haven't changed despite technological advancement. Persian Gulf silver routes connect Indian subcontinent silver mining to Mediterranean markets through Iranian coastal areas and land transportation networks. Alternative routes require additional 2,000 miles through hostile territory or unreliable political jurisdictions. Caspian Sea silver pathways link Central Asian silver production to European markets through Iranian territory and transportation infrastructure. Alternative routes cross Russian or Turkish territory that creates additional political complications and transportation costs. Arabian Peninsula connections connect Saudi and Yemeni silver sources to Asian markets through Iranian territorial waters and land borders. Alternative routing through Red Sea requires additional 1,500 miles, plus navigation through unstable regional conflicts. Combined Iranian route control represents 40% of global silver transportation infrastructure that cannot be replaced quickly or cheaply through alternative pathways due to geographic and political constraints. Iran war makes these routes impossible for commercial silver transportation immediately. Not reduced capacity, not increased costs, complete elimination of silver supply channels that handle majority of global silver trade flows. Alternative routing through Russian, Turkish, or African territories requires months of new infrastructure development while increasing transportation costs by 60 to 80% through additional distance and political risk premiums. Silver shortage becomes immediate when Iranian routes close, while alternative supply chains require 6 to 112 months to develop sufficient capacity for replacing Iranian transportation infrastructure. But Iran war silver shortage occurs exactly when monetary demand reaches maximum levels through American fiscal crisis that amplifies precious metals demand beyond historical military conflict precedent. American government debt, $38.5 trillion, requires $1.1 trillion annual interest payments before military costs. Iran war adds $18 billion weekly to government expenditure that already exceeds sustainable fiscal mathematics. Currency instability through war finance creates precious metals. Demand that historical precedent shows always exceeds supply availability during military conflicts that occur during fiscal crisis periods. Iran war represents perfect convergence of supply destruction with monetary demand explosion during empire fiscal breakdown that creates silver prices beyond any historical precious metals precedent. Technical analysis suggests silver supply disruption plus monetary demand during fiscal crisis generates price appreciation that reflects true scarcity rather than conventional market relationships. Silver inventory mathematics show above-ground silver supplies totaling 1.1 billion ounces globally, with annual consumption of 1.3 billion ounces. Iran route closure eliminates 520 million ounces from transportation capacity, while war monetary demand adds 200 million ounces to investment consumption. Supply shortage, 520 million ounces eliminated. Demand increase, 200 million ounces additional. Net impact, 720 million ounce deficit in silver market that cannot absorb deficit of this magnitude without explosive price appreciation. Historical precedent shows precious metals facing supply disruption during monetary crisis experience, price appreciation that reflects physical scarcity multiplied by monetary alternatives demand. Silver at $500 per ounce represents mathematical correction based on supply shortage mathematics combined with monetary demand during fiscal crisis rather than speculative bubble or market manipulation. Conservative analysis assumes Iranian route closure lasting 12 months, with alternative supply chain development restoring 60% of transportation capacity. Monetary demand based on historical military conflict precedent, adjusted for current American fiscal crisis levels. Aggressive scenario includes Iranian route closure extending beyond 12 months due to regional conflict expansion, while alternative supply chain development faces additional political obstacles. Monetary demand accelerating through American fiscal breakdown, triggered by military expenditure beyond sustainable capacity. Aggressive analysis suggests silver prices exceeding $150 per ounce become mathematically inevitable through supply scarcity, combined with exponential monetary demand during empire fiscal collapse acceleration. But Iran war, silver shortage creates consequences beyond precious metals market, appreciation that affect industrial civilization functionality during supply chain breakdown. Solar panel manufacturing requires 20 grams silver per panel. Iran route closure eliminates 40% of silver supply for renewable energy production, exactly when government mandates require massive solar deployment for climate compliance. Green energy transition becomes impossible without Iranian silver supplies, while alternative supply chains require years to develop sufficient capacity for replacing Iranian transportation networks. Electronics production depends on silver for circuit boards and electrical components. Iran supply disruption creates immediate shortage for smartphone, computer, and industrial electronics manufacturing that cannot substitute alternative materials without performance degradation. Medical device production requires silver for antimicrobial properties and electrical conductivity. Iranian supply shortage threatens medical equipment manufacturing during period when healthcare systems face maximum pressure through economic and military crisis. Industrial silver shortage accelerates economic breakdown, while precious metals price appreciation reflects monetary crisis during empire fiscal collapse period. Silver becomes simultaneously unavailable for industrial applications and unaffordable for commercial applications, while remaining essential for monetary preservation during currency system breakdown. The paradox creates economic consequences beyond precious metals. Market appreciation that affect technological civilization, sustainability during supply chain warfare and monetary system crisis. But there's something more significant about Iran war silver dynamics that historical precedent shows creates permanent rather than temporary precious metals. Market changes. Iran route control represents geographic advantage that military conflict cannot eliminate permanently through American victory or strategic objectives achievement. Iranian territory remains essential for efficient silver transportation regardless of political control or military outcomes. Military conflict destroys transportation infrastructure that requires years to rebuild, while creating political instability that makes commercial silver transportation unreliable for extended periods beyond conflict resolution. Iranian silver route closure creates permanent supply chain changes that favor regional suppliers and alternative transportation networks that exclude American commercial participation. China and Russia develop alternative silver supply agreements with Asian producers that bypass Iranian routes, while excluding American and European silver access through political alignment rather than commercial relationships. Regional silver trading networks emerge that function independently of Western commercial systems, while providing superior terms for producers and consumers who avoid Iranian route dependency. Iran war triggers silver supply chain reorganization that permanently reduces Western access to Asian silver production, while creating alternative systems that function without American or European participation. Silver shortage becomes a structural feature of Western economies, while alternative silver networks provide adequate supplies for non-Western industrial and monetary applications. The transformation represents permanent silver market fragmentation where Western silver shortage meets non-Western silver abundance through geopolitical alignment rather than commercial efficiency. Historical precedent shows military conflicts that disrupt ancient trading routes create permanent commercial realignment that reflects political relationships rather than economic efficiency. Iran, where silver shortage doesn't resolve through conflict conclusion, it accelerates through commercial realignment toward suppliers and transportation networks that avoid political instability through alternative relationships. American empire faces permanent silver disadvantage through Iranian route loss, while competing powers develop silver access advantages through alternative supply chain development. Silver shortage accelerates American industrial decline, while silver availability supports competitor industrial development through supply chain warfare that continues beyond military conflict resolution. The mathematics create permanent competitive disadvantage, where American industrial silver shortage meets competitor silver abundance through geopolitical supply chain control rather than production capacity differences. Iran war represents final supply chain battle that determines which powers maintain industrial capacity and which powers face resource constraints through geographic control loss during empire decline period. Silver at $500 per ounce reflects this permanent transition rather than temporary military conflict impact on precious metals markets. Supply chain warfare destroys empire industrial capacity more effectively than military warfare, while creating competitive advantages for powers that control alternative supply networks. Iran war silver dynamics confirm what sophisticated geopolitical observers recognized months ago. Empire decline accelerates through supply chain control loss rather than military defeat. Resource access determines industrial capacity. Industrial capacity determines empire sustainability. Supply chain control determines resource access. Iran war eliminates American silver access while providing competitor silver advantages through ancient route control that modern military power cannot overcome permanently. Silver shortage becomes a permanent feature of American industrial decline, while silver availability supports competitor industrial advancement through supply chain warfare victory. The war begins with military objectives. The consequence ends with permanent industrial disadvantage through supply chain control loss that no military victory can reverse. Iran controls the routes. War eliminates the access. Competitors benefit permanently through supply chain advantage. Silver reaches $500 per ounce because scarcity becomes permanent competitive disadvantage rather than temporary military conflict impact. The mathematics are absolute. The routes are irreplaceable. The competition is permanent. Iran war triggers final supply chain battle that completes empire industrial decline through resource access loss disguised as military conflict. Silver shortage proves empire vulnerability, while precious metals appreciation reflects supply chain warfare victory for powers that control ancient trading routes. Geographic advantages determine resource access. Resource access determines industrial capacity. Industrial capacity determines empire survival. Iran war exposes American dependence on supply chains that competitors control through geographic position rather than industrial production. The lesson becomes clear through silver shortage that exceeds military conflict resolution. Supply chain control determines empire outcome more than military superiority. Silver at $500 represents recognition of this reality through precious metals market that reflects permanent competitive disadvantage rather than temporary supply disruption. The war begins. Roots close. Silver soars. Empire declines through supply chain control loss that no military power overcomes permanently. The mathematics demand it. Geography confirms it. History proves it. Iran war sends silver to $500 because supply chain warfare destroys empires more effectively than conventional military conflict. Ancient roots determine modern outcomes. Geographic control beats military superiority. Supply chains win wars that armies cannot finish. Silver shortage proves the lesson, while precious metals prices reflect permanent empire disadvantage through supply chain control loss. $500 silver represents recognition rather than speculation, permanent rather than temporary, structural rather than cyclical. Iran controls the roots. War closes the access. Silver reflects the consequence. Mathematical inevitability disguised as military conflict. Empire decline through supply chain warfare that precious metals markets recognize before military analysts understand. The silver surge begins when recognition becomes reality and supply chain control determines empire outcomes beyond military superiority. Iran war triggers it. Silver markets prove it. Historical precedent confirms it. Empire decline through resource access loss. Precious metals appreciation through permanent scarcity recognition. Silver to $500 because geography matters more than military power when ancient routes determine modern resource flows. The war starts it. The silver shortage finishes it. The price appreciation confirms permanent empire disadvantage through supply chain control loss. Recognition becomes reality. Scarcity becomes permanent. Price becomes reflection of new competitive balance where geographic control determines resource access more than military dominance. Iran holds the keys. War locks the doors. Silver price reflects permanent change rather than temporary disruption. $500 represents destination confirmed by mathematics rather than speculation driven by sentiment. Supply chain warfare concludes what military superiority cannot prevent. Empire decline through resource control loss that precious metals markets recognize first. Silver proves the pattern, while price reflects permanent reality beyond military conflict resolution.